Blown opportunities cost the Mets a series victory in Philadelphia, but more importantly, Francisco Lindor is hurt. Could this injury derail the Mets season? I'll talk about that more on today's show.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. This episode's brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use the code all in lowercase LockedOnMLB to win $50 instantly when you play $5. There is no way around it. This was a brutal weekend for the New York Mets, and it started on such an incredible high. The Mets blowing out the Phillies in game one of the series, and then Francisco Lindor ends up with a back injury. Weren't sure if it was going to be too serious. He does not play on Saturday. We see the debut of Luisangel Acuña. The Mets jump out to an early lead then as well. So you think about where the Mets were early on in the game on Saturday, after winning the first game. Not a ton of fear about Lindor. Yes, he didn't play, but we weren't overly concerned this was some serious back injury. So then, Sunday, Lindor goes out there and plays an inning and gets scratched again. And we will talk about how the Mets blew that game on Saturday. I already did a show on it, so you can go back and listen to that. I did an audio-only show on my vacation talking about that game and what happened there, and then also about the Lindor injury at the time, right? And what I said was we would not know how serious this was until we saw Lindor play. And this could be something that could play his way through. Maybe you're going to get an 80% version of Francisco Lindor, and that could still be the case. But the worst case scenario was him going out there on Sunday, playing an inning and getting pulled. That's as bad as it could be, honestly. In some respects, part of me would have almost preferred him not playing. And just, we're out of an abundance of caution, we're resting this, making sure for him to get himself ready, to be good to go and head back out there and start that game today and then get pulled. It casts a shadow over the rest of the season. It just does. And I'll talk all about the game in the next segment. I'll talk about David Peterson's great performance, how it came up a little bit short. Mets had a chance to win it late. Edwin Diaz blowing another one. We'll go through all of it. But if you think there's any other headlining story about this team other than Francisco Lindor's injury right now, you're just wrong. Because we are going to get, if we like it or not, the evidence on Lindor's most valuable player's season from what happens on the stretch. Because if this team crumbles, it's almost even more of a statement or a testament to how valuable this guy was if they just can't win without him. And I'm not saying he's done for the year either, okay? But, and I'm not even saying they lost this series because of him not being available, because I actually don't think they did. I thought they were in position to win these games without him. The point is, this guy means everything to this team. And it would be very hard to see them pulling this off without Francisco Lindor. Now, this is not yet qualified as a season-ending injury or that he's going to be out for a week. Right now, it's still day-to-day. He goes out there. He got himself ready to go. The trainer signed off on it. He was going to go and play a full game on Sunday and just get back to being the New York Mets everyday starting shortstop. Leads off the game. Fouls went off. He said he felt good when he regathered himself after the foul ball. Thought he was in a good spot. Then he gets a base hit, because of course he does. But he ran really gingerly to first base. Wasn't taking much of a lead at all. Let the first base coach know, get Acuña ready. Went back out there. Played defense in the bottom of the first. Even made a play, but was timid with it and pulled himself from the game. Now, he said after the game that they're going to get an MRI on Monday to see what's going on there. So now we're all holding our breath to get the results of that, because we could find out that there's something there that has to be shut down, and then it's good luck, right? Hopefully the MRI comes back clean. Whatever's going on there is just something that he could eventually play through. He said that this is actually something he's been dealing with for a little while. Said maybe it's been a couple weeks. I did some research just because I was curious. How long could Lindor's back have been hurting here? Is there something we can see in the stats? And the one thing that jumped out to me was just the stolen bases have been tapering off pretty consistently. So you look at what he did in June and July. He stole 7 bases each of those months. Since then, since the calendar turned to August, he's only stolen 5 bases. And even further, if you look at May 30th through August 7th, Francisco Lindor stole 18 bases. He's stolen 27 this year. Over his last 34 games played, he has only stolen 3 bases. Now, does that mean he's been hurt this whole time? Not necessarily saying that, but a guy that plays 162 games at a position as taxing as shortstop, he's going to play through stuff. And he's been playing through stuff his entire Mets career, really. And he posts, he puts up great seasons, he puts up numbers, and he doesn't really complain about the injuries. We've just found out after, last year, he was playing with bone spurs in his elbow the whole year, put up a 30-30 season. This year, he's been healthy for most of the year. That's why he's had such a good year. But maybe there has been something going on for a little bit. And maybe it was just soreness, general soreness that any player is going to go through when they're going through the marathon. But now it's been aggravated. And he said, okay, the last couple weeks, maybe it's been building. It's been getting worse and worse. And it's such an ironic injury because here's the guy that's had this team on his back all year. And of course, it's his back that goes. And so now he has, stepping on the base weird, that freak injury on Friday that exacerbates the injury, makes it worse. And now here we go. And another side story about this, as any of the listeners who tune in every day know, I spent the weekend in Chicago visiting my sister's family, my brother-in-law, my nephews. And on Saturday, my brother-in-law was picking up his son Austin. He was playing a game, throwing him over his shoulder as my other nephew Derek was having baseball practice, funny enough. And my brother-in-law threw out his back. And the last couple days have been struggling to move around. I mean, brutal. Back injuries are the worst. As Lindor said, with the back injury, your whole body starts to go because you can't function with the back injury. So all of this is to say, the New York Mets without Francisco Lindor, they're in a really bad spot. And the thing about this, too, is Jeff McNeil's injury looms large because had this happened, but McNeil was healthy, Iglesias is your starting shortstop. You're not losing too much defensively, and he's been swinging it great. And he's actually been even better since McNeil went down. He's really stepped up. And Jeff McNeil will be your starting second baseman. They could get by with those guys. They really could. Now it's a rookie who's just thrown into the fire in Luisangel Acuña, and they have Eddie Alvarez, the guy who spent the entire season in the minor leagues. So if they want to, they can go Alvarez at second, Iglesias at short. But I think the move is probably going to be start Luisangel Acuña and hope you catch lightning in a bottle. Now, hopefully it's just Monday, or maybe it's Monday and Tuesday. Honestly, if it was my decision, I would say, you know what? Give Lindor 72 hours to figure this thing out. And just try to get him ready for that series against Philly on Thursday. That's when you need Francisco Lindor. And you know what? If you have to DH him a little bit down the stretch here to just get him through, do what you can because you need his bat in the lineup. You just do. And the good thing about Acuña is he's going to give you the defense still. Might not be Lindor levels, but he's not going to hurt you there. This is not a bat-first prospect. This is a glove-first prospect. So in some respects, that's the good thing. Really what this comes down to, all these other guys got to step up. It's on Pete Alonso and Brandon Nimmo's shoulders here. 2 weeks, you got a chance to carry this team to the playoffs. Lindor's been doing it all season long. Pete Alonso and Brandon Nimmo need to step up. Mark Vientos has been doing it for large portions of the season. He's still available. He's got to do it. But I've been harping on this for so long throughout this season. Nimmo and Alonso have got to get the job done. And as much as we could freak out and panic, the season's over. The Braves lost tonight. Dodgers beat them 9-2. So the Mets enter with the final 2 weeks of the season, 13 games left. They are dead even with the Atlanta Braves, and they have a series coming up against them next week. So the Mets still have a shot, with or without Lindor, to make the playoffs. And I think the hope is that Lindor will be available at some point. And maybe you just got to be a little more cautious this time about ramping him up. And I think the fact that you got Washington coming into town, if it's me, I'd say give him some time, see what happens. I'll also note Starling Marte, his x-rays came back negative. So he's not going to hit the IL. The Mets will have Starling Marte available down the stretch. He's got a very sore arm. He had a bad bruise, I'm sure. He got drilled in the forearm, but he's going to be able to play. So the Mets depth, which is taking hits day by day with McNeil and now Lindor, Marte is going to be available at some point here. And you got a couple lefties in this series in the second and third game. So ideally, Marte could start on Tuesday and Wednesday. But you look at the road ahead and what this comes down to for this week. Find your way to win 5 games, and we'll talk about that a little bit more throughout the show. And you're playing all these games at home. Pete Alonso, JD Martinez, Brandon Nimmo, Mark Vientos, Jose Iglesias, Jesse Winker. These are good hitters. Acuña at shortstop is good defensively. Iglesias at second is good defensively. Harrison Bader or Tyrone Taylor is good defensively in center. You still have good defense up the middle. You still have a starting rotation that has gotten you to this point with the way that David Peterson, Sean Manaea, Luis Severino, and Jose Quintana have thrown the ball. All that's still in place. And the Mets, without Lindor the last 2 games, could have won either of them. So can this team get it done? Yes. But everybody else has to pick up the slack. And I think the one positive about Acuña being the answer right now is there's something about the unknown. Maybe Acuña can have a big series against the Nationals and just get hot and go off of adrenaline, playing in front of Mets fans for their first time, and the Mets could have a really nice series coming up here. But they definitely missed opportunities against the Phillies, and that's what we're going to talk about next here, particularly on Sunday. They wasted a gem by David Peterson. They can't do that much more if they want to be a playoff team. So let's go through the games, or really the game on Sunday, in just a minute. First, though, quick word from our sponsor. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little bit different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5, get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon at a market game. All you need is a Google account and a current foreign payment, and you can cancel anytime. Again, this is for all FanDuel customers, not just new customers, where you bet $5 and get that 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Again, all you need is a Google account and a current foreign payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Stay up to date with all the latest in the world of sports when you check out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. The goal is to get to 10,000 subscribers by the end of the season, so I appreciate all of you who continue to subscribe. Now, David Peterson was in a real pitcher's duel on Sunday. He was brilliant. Okay, Christopher Sanchez, obviously as the home team, started the game off, was pitching the top half of every inning, and he was lights out himself. So each inning, Peterson had to come on for the bottom half and try to match him. And frame by frame, David Peterson put up zeros. Through the first 7 innings, neither lefty gave up a run. Sanchez allowed just 1 walk and 4 hits with 7 strikeouts. David Peterson, 2 hits, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts. He just continued to make pitch after pitch after pitch, made some really good hitters like Kyle Schwarber just look bad, just throwing fastballs by him. You go through that lineup, David Peterson did, with Schwarber, Trey Turner, Bryce Harper, Nick Castellanos, JT Realmuto, all these established veterans. And he just continued to deliver for the New York Mets. But on the other side, the same thing was going on with Christopher Sanchez. Top of the 8th inning, Tyrone Taylor finally broke through for the Mets. He got a hanging slider and a really good at bat, crushed it, hits a home run. The Mets took a 1-0 lead. Harrison Bader then got a base hit, and Christopher Sanchez didn't even get an out in that 7th inning. They knocked him out of the game. Here's the difference between these two teams, though. The Phillies bullpen was nails. The Mets bullpen, not so much. Really, though, the Phillies won this game. Really. The Mets bullpen was more of an issue the day before, and we'll talk about that in a second here. But you look at David Peterson, right? Gets through 7. I think there could have been an argument to be made for Carlos Mendoza to go to Edwin Diaz in the 8th inning. 6-out save. If there was ever a time to do it, Edwin hadn't pitched the last couple days. That was the time to go to your supposed relief ace to get the job done. With that said, was I thinking that when David Peterson started off that inning? No, because I thought Peterson was going to find his way. But just like Sanchez faltered in the top half of the 8th, David Peterson faltered in the bottom half. Now, here's the crazy part. He gives up back-to-back doubles to lead things off to Weston Wilson and Buddy Kennedy. The names of the Phillies that beat you this weekend is just infuriating. Weston Wilson and Buddy Kennedy. Now, Wilson's double was a changeup that got way too much of the plate. So that one is on David Peterson. Buddy Kennedy, that was a good slider that he hit. You just have to tip your cap. And then you got to give Peterson credit. He stays on. Obviously, it was a bunting situation. And he made a great play on a really good bunt. Came in, bare hand, spin, turn, fire to Iglesias. Iglesias made some tough plays on runners coming in on him. And when he caught it and they got that out at first, he sort of like slammed his arm down. Like, that didn't feel good for Iglesias. And he knows the risk there. Should have to hold your ground in a game of chicken and catch that ball as the runner's about to glide into you. Second time in as many days that he made a play like that. So shout out to Iglesias. And then Peterson gets Schwarber out again, gets him to ground out to Iglesias. They hold the runner, and you have 2 outs. Runner standing on third. Peterson gets pulled. Phil Maton comes on, and Maton gets the out. So from my vantage point, David Peterson, if he didn't pitch Christopher Sanchez to a draw, he won because he got 2 additional outs and gave up less hits and really did give the Mets a chance. But he also had a lead to pitch with, and he couldn't get that last 0. Those doubles were killers, but the Mets still had a shot. They couldn't score in the 9th, so they had to do it in extras. Edwin Diaz comes on. He strikes out Bryce Harper, then gives up a base hit to Nick Castellanos, strikes out Alec Boehm. Got ahead to JT Realmuto 0-2 in that last at-bat. But here's where the Mets lost the game. On the Boehm strikeout, 1-2 count. Nick Castellanos steals second. Now you say, man, the Mets blew it. Edwin Diaz should have held him better. Francisco Alvarez should have thrown Nick Castellanos. Here's where I want to really try to turn your perspective on this a little bit. Can we acknowledge that the Phillies won this series more than the Mets lost it? Here's what I mean by that. That was a hell of a play by Nick Castellanos to make that decision to steal a base there. He knows that Edwin Diaz is up in the count 1-2. And what's likely to come against Alec Boehm? A slider low and away. So he plays the percentages. I'm going to steal on this pitch because this is not going to be a 99-mile-per-hour fastball or I'll be a sitting duck. It's going to be a slider. It's going to be a slider low and away. That's a tough pitch for a catcher to throw on. Not only that, Castellanos got a great jump. A great jump. By stealing second base, he puts himself in scoring position with 2 outs. Then you got to credit JT Realmuto because it wasn't a horrible pitch by Edwin Diaz. It was 99 miles per hour up and away. It's a lot of guys that swing through that. And early in that at bat, JT Realmuto looked overmatched by the fastball. Here's where he really made the mistake. Because as much as you can say the Mets made a huge mistake letting Castellanos steal, I would actually counter if you really think about it and say that was just a great play by him. Where Edwin Diaz and Francisco Alvarez, if he was the one that made that call, which I assume he was, where they blew this game. You got to throw a slider to Realmuto first before you go back to that fastball. Or if you are going to go to an 0-2 fastball, got to be up and out of the zone. You can't throw it in the zone and give him a shot. Because all JT Realmuto did is he shortened up, hit a line drive to right field, and the Phillies win the game. So it was a couple bad pitches that cost the Mets, and obviously the fact that their offense just couldn't get going in this final game where they blew an opportunity to win a series. But if you look at the series as a whole, the Phillies just won, man. That's the best team in baseball this year by record. First team to 90 wins. And teams like that to win that many games, they get lucky at times too. And not lucky in the fact that they didn't earn it, but lucky in the fact that they get Cal Stevenson on Saturday. Guy who's not some great hitter. Played 14 games with the Phillies this year. And Reed Garrett gives him a 3-2 pitch that was not bad. Cutter, low and away. Cutter low and in. If I'm not mistaken. Is Cal Stevenson a righty or a lefty? Now I'm drawing a blank on it. I know the location of the pitch, but he's a lefty. Okay, so it's a cutter low and in. Which is even a better pitch, honestly. In on his hands. You want to attack Cal Stevenson. You're not supposed to just walk Cal Stevenson or throw a pitch out of the zone. You want to throw a competitive strike, and Garrett did that. But the Phillies are more of a team of destiny. Stevenson comes through, hits the double. That turns the game against the Mets. Was it a bullpen meltdown? Yes. Did Dan Young come in and give up a couple of hits? Absolutely. But Reed Garrett nearly pitched the Mets out of it, and it was a great piece of hitting that allowed the Phillies to win on Saturday. And then Cal Stevenson goes and rods a home run. It's just a series that the Phillies went out and won. And then today it's Weston Wilson and Buddy Kennedy that are hitting those doubles. Here's the way I would look at it, though. The New York Mets were in position to win each of these games. They blew out the first one, and they were in position for these last two. This is not a team that just shriveled in Philly. Yes, they blew some games they could have won, but the Phillies also executed better down the stretch of these games. And the Washington Nationals are not going to execute at that level. So if the New York Mets can put themselves in position to win all these games at Citi Field at home, I still think this group, even without Francisco Lindor, can get the job done. So let's preview that series next here. Can the Mets do what we all want them to against the Nationals? You all know what that is. I don't have to tell you. Can they get the job done? We'll talk about that in just a minute. First, though, another word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. You watch the winnings roll in. Get on the daily action with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community today, where you can now win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. So you can turn $10 into $1,000. And the best part about Prize Picks, you can go across different sports. So on Sunday, you can go with NFL games and Major League Baseball, or on Saturdays for college football, you can look at that and Major League Baseball, WNBA, all the different sports are there for you at Prize Picks. And again, as little as 4 correct picks, you can turn $10 into $1,000. Run your game on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this football season. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB. You're going to get $50 instantly when you play 5. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play 5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. If you're an everyday listener of the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks on the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime. You can also take part in our Locked On Mets signed photo giveaways, and you get the live graphic sent to your phone each day, so you know the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find a link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Before we preview Mets versus Nationals, let's talk about the Braves and this NL wildcard race. Again, they lost on Sunday. So these two teams are even with 2 weeks left to play. And if I told you on April 24th, May 24th, June 24th, July 24th, August 24th, if I told you at any point throughout this season that the Mets would enter the final 2 weeks of the season and they'd be even with the Braves, would you have signed up for it? Absolutely. Absolutely. They will meet on September 24th in Atlanta. Get to that series at least even. It's that simple. And then you beat the Braves in that series. You're in the driver's seat, a game up with the tiebreaker because these two teams have split their season series so far, 5 games apiece. So if you get there, even with the Braves going into that series, in my opinion, I wouldn't say you're golden to make it, but you have accomplished the goal of the season. And yes, the Braves might break your heart. Fine. But at least you got there. So this next week is critical to not drop the ball. Where that series, you're going in and you're 3 games back and you're saying, okay, we got to sweep the Braves so that we can stay alive. If that happens, you're already dead. So the Mets had to have a good week here. And looking at the Braves week, they do have the easier slate. There's no doubt about it because they don't play the Phillies 4 times. They got one more against the Dodgers, and they have done an amazing job this series because they took the first 2 games. They did lose today, but to even take 2 against the Dodgers is a win. They got one more on Monday, Max Fried versus Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Then they hit the road. They play 3 in Cincinnati, 3 in Miami. Now, it's not easy to go on a road trip and sweep in 2 cities. That's a very tough thing to do, especially for a Braves team that is not the wagon that they have been in the past. Can they do it? Sure. Could the Braves go 7-0 this week? Absolutely. But is that likely? Not necessarily. They lose against the Dodgers on Monday and then just lose one of the 6 games on the road. And the Mets go 5-2. They're even. They're even going into that series. And then again, tiebreaker on the line, you win that series, you're in the driver's seat. Now, there's also the Diamondbacks to discuss because they lost the first 2 games they played this weekend going up against the Brewers. And they play the Brewers in Milwaukee to close out this upcoming week, 4 games. They got a 3-game set in Colorado first, then they go to Milwaukee. And that's a Brewers team that's playing for a potential first-round bye. And they're also still trying to, I guess they've already clinched their division, right? I would assume so. Let me check that. I don't even know. I would think they've clinched the division, or they're getting pretty darn close to it. But regardless, that's a good team. It's a very good Brewers team. They have not clinched yet, as the Cubs are 10 games back, though. So, I mean, their magic number is probably any day now. Regardless, they're going to be playing all the way through. So the Diamondbacks do not have an easy week to go on the road. So you never know. Now, because they were able to battle back on Sunday, and I was watching that game in the airport, I saw Jackson Chourio hit the RBI triple with 2 runs on in extra innings and, give the Brewers a 2-run lead. And I thought for sure the Diamondbacks were going to lose and they're going to get swept. They showed incredible resilience. Actually, I was on the plane flying home for the bottom half, so I didn't get to watch the bottom of the 10th. And I landed. The first thing I did was I looked at the Diamondback score. Actually, I looked at the Braves score first, then the Diamondback score. And I saw that they just rallied and nobody even got out in the bottom of the 10th. They found a way to salvage a win in that series. They're a gritty team and are now still 2 games up on the Mets and the Braves, but that can change. And remember, they closed their season against the Padres, who are starting to seem like the team that's not going to fall out of this thing. They swept the Giants in San Francisco over the weekend. They're now 3.5 games up on the Mets and the Braves, a 1.5 games over the Diamondbacks. They do play the Astros this week, but then they face off against the White Sox, an opportunity to probably sweep a series. The final week of the season, they had the Dodgers and the Diamondbacks, so they're not out of the woods, but for now, they're far enough ahead that I wouldn't even be looking at them. Ultimately, we'll know how many spots are up for grabs as we get closer and closer to the end. For now, all the Mets can focus on is beating the team in front of them. They got to sweep this Nationals team, or at least win the series. And then if they do that, they'd have to beat the Phillies in that series. Yes, there's a world where the Braves have a bad week. The Diamondbacks could have a bad week. The Mets could go 3-4 this week. Those 2 teams could suck as well, and we could be having a completely different conversation next Monday. That's still in the cards. It's not impossible. But ideally, you go 5-2 because if those other two teams falter, maybe the Mets are sitting in the second wild card spot. Maybe they've got a couple games lead on the Braves going into that series. This is a series against the Nationals where you really got to take advantage. It's your last quote unquote easy series of the season. With that said, you might not have Francisco Lindor, and the Nationals are 7-6 this month. They can be a dangerous spoiler here. They have Dylan Cruz up. He was the second overall pick last year, drafted right after his LSU teammate Paul Skeens. Pretty much a can't miss prospect. James Wood, we have seen before, but now we're going to see James Wood after some months of MLB seasoning. So he's gotten better and better. And then you have CJ Abrams, who's always dangerous. That is the future of the Nationals, those three players. And they would love nothing more than to beat up the Mets and make this a much tougher road in the final 10 games beyond this. So you got to find your way. Game 1, Jake Irvin's on the mound. Irvin could be really dangerous. We saw him against the Mets on the 4th of July, where it was what? Was it a complete game shutout? I can't even remember now. Either 8 shutout innings or 9. He was great. He was great against the Braves his last time out. So you look at this pitching matchup, it's not easy, but you have Sean Manaea on the hill. So Manaea has to be the ace. He has to be the stopper. He's got to get the Mets back on track. And the lineup's got to step up. Pete Alonso, where you at? Brandon Nimmo, JD Martinez, where you at? These guys got to hit in this series. Game 2 is going to be Mitchell Parker versus Tyler McGill. Parker got a 4.24 ERA this year. He's a lefty. McGill is a complete wild card, but he is coming off a good start, so we'll see how that goes. Game 3, DJ Hers, another lefty. He's got a 3.70 ERA this year going up against Jose Quintana, who's been brilliant lately. So we'll see if Quintana can keep it up, but this is a series for the New York Mets where they just have to find a way. With Lindor, without Lindor, they can beat this Nationals team. And if you really handle your business and you sweep this Nationals team, a lot less pressure to have to beat the Phillies in that series, because you know what? The Phillies are going to want to have their champagne shower at Citi Field for clinching the National League East. And the way the math is working out, it could happen. It really could happen. You know what? Maybe it gets to a point where the Mets can use that as a point of pride. You're not celebrating here. Maybe they end up avoiding that or delaying that for the Phillies for a little bit. But that's the next series. The Mets have to focus on what's presently in front of them, and that is a Nationals team that they have owned this year that has a chance to get some revenge in the 11th hour and really mess up the Mets season. You're not a Mets fan if you're not nervous. It's that simple. But don't go to the extreme of anything that can go wrong will go wrong because it's the Mets. It might prove to be the case, but this team has shown us time and again that they will step up and come through. And you can say, oh, well, that was with Lindor. They had these 2 games to be able to beat the Phillies, and the Phillies just show that they're the better team because they are. But the Mets are the better team in this series. So go out and handle your business. I'll be back covering every single game of this series. Also, if you're listening on the podcast feed, you will see each game. We're having the postcast that's going to be in the feed as well. If you are looking for some instant reaction after the game, as my shows come out in the morning, go to the Locked On New York Sports YouTube channel and you'll see the postcast, but you also will get them on your audio feed. So if there's a great game, you want to hear somebody else talk about it, you can do that as well. But I will still be here. Same thing as we've had all season long. Episodes go live on YouTube at 6 a.m. each day, and they go up a little bit before that on the podcast feed every single day. So make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You subscribe to our YouTube channel. Again, goal is to get to 10,000 subs by the end of the season. So I appreciate all of you who continue to subscribe there. Follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen, your first watch every day. Now for your second watch, head over to YouTube and check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel that covers everything in the world of sports. Talking about Locked On Sports today with our local hosts from each team, league-wide hosts from each league, by Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube.